Many thanks for joining. I will start off in Nigeria today, where the federal government is looking to push the nation's debt stock to another 50.22 trillion naira by the year 2023. Now, at the moment, the domestic debt value is at 28.75 trillion and 21.47 trillion eternally.
Well, they plan for the 2021 to 2025 the debt plan. The Debt Management Office disclosed that Nigeria's public debt was now at 38 trillion naira as of the end of the third quarter in 2021, which then brings total debt stock accumulation to rise by, check this out, 2.540 trillion naira in 3 months systematically from July all the way to September. Now, what this shows automatically is that the President, Muhammadu Buhari's administration, might be accumulating about 12 trillion naira in debt between 2021 to 2023.
Right now, this is coming at this time when they are planning ahead for 2022. Now, looking at the 2022 budget, now federal government says it will borrow to cover a budget deficit of about 6.3 trillion naira next year. Now, a lot of people are really eager to know what we can do, because it seems like our borrowing length or our borrowing portfolio has been increasing recently. Now, if we're looking at the amount of money that has been borrowed in the past years, looking at the year 2017, we borrowed about, when it comes to borrowing to part finance budget deficit, it has been declining until the COVID that happened. But it seems we'll be having someone to join us to shed more light on this, and this is Mokhtar Mohammed, who is the CEO of Asher Dynamic Solution and is also a business analyst. Many thanks for joining, Mohammed. Now, the federal government is scaling up its plans to acquire even more debt between now and 2023. From a layman's point of view and from a business angle, can you help us make sense of all of this?
Well, good morning and compliments of the season. If you look at the type of borrowing, I've been saying it for a while, that the type of borrowing we've seen from the government has been one of the best we've seen in recent time when it comes to borrowing. But unfortunately, I think they are not looking at the revenue, they are only looking at how much they can borrow. And sometimes we look at this borrowing, where I say this borrowing has been nice is because we look at this borrowing in terms of using it to fund infrastructural development, which has been key to which will be key to Nigerian economic prosperity. If you look at that by and by what the government is doing, you could say they are borrower right. But the challenge in terms, like I said, is the revenue, and in terms of most of our sector have not been diversified. So our major revenue drivers still remain the oil sector. So when there's any external shock from that sector, it becomes a problem for us. So borrowing in itself is not wrong, because any business that wants to expand will definitely want to borrow to do expansion. The only challenge we have is borrowing in terms of spending our overhead costs. And we have seen that thus far our capital expenditure is still very low compared to our recurrent expenditure. And then the government is not ready to take the bull by the horn and do the right thing in trying to reduce expenditure. I think that is the major challenge for me.
All right, Mukhtar, should the Nigerian citizens be worried about the federal government increasing the debt rate? Are there any more implications to this?
Well, I don't know why the Nigerian citizens should not be worried. They should be worried in terms of that this government is not going to be the one to pay this debt. And most of the debt that this government are borrowing, they have a tax holiday, and it will not be paid by this present government. That's one thing we don't know. Some of them have a tax holiday of 2 to 3 years, some even have up to 4 years before we start paying. So basically, this government will not be the one to pay. And so maybe subsequent government in the future may begin to tell us that the challenges they have is in terms of debt management, on how to manage the debt. That's why they are not able to do anything. So a call for cause for worry. But then if we are able to diversify the economy, especially making Nigeria look at the non-oil sector that is not so much prone to too much shocks, and then using what we earn from the oil sector to begin to develop other aspects of the economy. And then again, one thing that the government is not looking at, ways whereby they can begin to use this infrastructural development as an asset for borrowing. And when we mean that, you mean the public-private partnership. You don't have to put any money on ground. We just put it for, you just said, okay, this company, you come and handle Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. After you finish it, you are going to run it for the next 25 years. By that 25 years, you are going to use it to collect your debt. So debt, then the debt services is not coming from government, it's coming from what you are earning, maybe through towing and others. So That is the way to go. If you look at America infrastructural bill, exactly that's what they are trying to do, using the public-private partnership, making it so the government is using its project as an asset base for attracting the private sector.
Right now, Mokhtar, you've just talked about diversifying the economy to ensure that we generate more revenue. Some other people believe that the high cost of governance is a huge factor in all of this. Don't you think it's high time we look and find a way to manage the high cost of governance, looking at the earnings that our senators get, our ministers, and even the presidency, the amount of money spent in maintaining all of that?
Definitely. And when you talk about the presidency, I like saying something. This presidency is one presidency that has come up. We have 2 special advisors on media, and out of those 2 special advisors on media, why do we need 2 special advisors, 1 senior advisor, or do we have 1 junior advisor? So we need to begin to take the bull by the horn. And some of these advisors will have palms, they will have other people under them. Some of the palms will have, so it's all about the cost of governance, and which I thought that this administration in coming to power is going to deal with it, especially when the president made us then to realize that if he comes to power, he doesn't see why we should have 6 private jets. And unfortunately, we are still having those private jets. We have not sold those private jets to do what he said we were going to do. So in terms of overhead costs, we are still seeing that even the National Assembly also have not helped matter by trying to create more ministries. Even when the Onosoya committee was talking about merger of some of these ministries because their work elapsed each other. So I think what we've lacked thus far is the political will to do the right thing, especially in the midst of the poverty in the land. And government is beginning to look at itself as a social investment scheme, whereby people are able to earn jobs because they have not created an enabling environment for the private sector to strive and create jobs. All right,
Mokhtar. So this administration, once again, planning another 12 trillion naira, borrowing, and the public debt to hit 50 million. But what are the other possible ways, Nigeria can use to pay back these debts, whether for this administration, whether they will borrow and go or not, going forward?
Unfortunately, there's only one. There are a lot of possible ways, like I've just listed one, using the project as an asset to attract investment. That's one way. Then secondly, by government looking inwardly also and beginning to think about what are the ways. And then one of those is using tax incentive, tax holiday as another means of payment of this debt. If you borrow some debt, sometimes you give company tax incentive whereby they are able to come and grow your economy, and by that they will be able to collect what you are owing them. So government need to look at that. But unfortunately, in any government, they are looking for a cheap way out of every problem. And the cheapest way out of a problem is to keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, knowing that your GDP to borrowing is okay, but nobody's looking at your revenue to borrowing. How much can you pay? And also not looking at our source of income, our source of revenue, knowing that we only have one major source of income that generates over 90% of our revenue. I think for me, that is a challenge. And this is not something that was created by this administration. We must say it has been something that has been ongoing. But we're expecting this administration to take the bull by the horn, especially with the kind of level of confidence the Nigerian people have on them to deliver. So, but unfortunately, they didn't take that advantage. And so we will keep on struggling in terms of this area, especially when the pandemic came in, also did not help matters. We must say that because from there, the price of crude went down. We had to begin to look at social investment. We forgot about our economic recovery group plan. We needed to think of survival sustainability first before you begin to talk about the economy, because at that time it's not all about how many economic policy that you have. It's about how much you can put food on the table for your people and how much you can save your people, especially when it comes to a health pandemic. I think that also did not help matters.
All right, Mokhtar, we'll see how this one goes. Public debt hitting the trillions by 2023. And this government, well, as they say, they're quite keen or perhaps addicted to borrowing. Thank you once again for coming on the program. Mokhtar Mohammed, CEO, Ashare Dynamic Solutions, and business analyst, for coming on Breakfast Central today.
Always my pleasure. Good morning and compliment of the season.
Compliment.